Welcome to the world of science fiction stories, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe my channel. Enjoy the listening. Gorvan Trell stared at the message hovering in the cramped cabin of his ship, the words glowing in accusatory red against the darkness. A human contract, 6 million credits, no questions asked. Most mercenaries would have deleted it immediately. The smart ones anyway. Human jobs were notorious across the 7 sectors. They paid well because nobody survived them. Humans didn't hire off-worlders unless the job was too terrible for their own kind. That was the unwritten rule. But Gorvan wasn't in a position to be choosy. His scales itched with anxiety as he flicked through his accounts again. 3 months behind on ship payments, bounty hunters from the Zeltari Collective closing in, and medical supplies for his chronic lung condition running dangerously low. Probability of surviving human contract, 17%, chirped his ship's AI pix. The neural implant had developed an annoying habit of offering unsolicited statistics. Probability of surviving the Zeltari if they catch me, Gorvan growled, his triple-jointed fingers tapping nervously on the console. 4.3%, Pix replied cheerfully. Gorvan's 4 nostrils flared, then I'll take the better odds. 3 standard days later, Gorvan found himself in a dingy bar on Nexus Station, the massive space hub that orbited Earth at a respectful distance. Humans didn't like visitors coming directly to their homeworld, not after what happened during the Proximian War. The bar reeked of synthetic alcohol and unfamiliar spices. Gorvan's heightened senses detected at least 6 different species in the smoky room, but his eyes remained fixed on the door. His contact was late. Gorvan Trell, the voice came from behind, though Gorvan hadn't heard anyone approach. He spun around, fighting his instinct to draw the pulse pistol hidden beneath his jacket. The human was small by their standards, with dark skin and silver implants visible at the temples. No visible weapons, which was more concerning than reassuring. The truly dangerous ones never showed their teeth. Jameson, the human said without offering a hand in greeting a small mercy, as Gorvan's culture considered physical contact with strangers deeply offensive. You accepted the contract. I need the credits, Gorvan replied bluntly. And I've heard the stories, so let's skip past the mysterious routine. What's the job and why have 3 merc teams already died doing it? The human's face remained impressively neutral. 4 teams. The most recent one disappeared yesterday. Gorvan's secondary heart skipped a beat, and yet here you are still recruiting. Jameson slid into the seat opposite, motioning to the bartender without speaking. 2 glasses of amber liquid appeared moments later. We need something recovered from Outpost Kappa 7, Jameson said, pushing 1 glass toward Gorvan. An abandoned Earth colony on the edge of the void. Something was discovered there before communication was lost. What kind of something? Gorvan asked, ignoring the drink. A relic pre-human, possibly pre-galactic. Gorvan's scales rippled with disbelief. If you found pre-galactic technology, why send mercenaries? This should be a full colonial expedition. Politics, Jameson replied smoothly. The Galactic Council has restricted human expansion since the incident. We need independent verification before making official claims. Gorvan had lived long enough to recognize a half-truth, and the other teams. Lost to environmental hazards, the planet's atmosphere is somewhat unstable. Jameson sipped his drink. You have respiratory augmentations according to your file. That gives you an advantage. Gorvan felt the weight of invisible eyes upon him. His file should have been encrypted beyond civilian access. Whatever Jameson was, civilian didn't cover it. 6 million credits, Gorvan said carefully. Half now, half on completion. 3 million upon departure, Jameson corrected. 3 million if you return with the artifact, non-negotiable. And if I refuse? Jameson smiled for the first time, revealing teeth that seemed too white, too perfect. Then you walk away. The Zeltari bounty hunters in the upper-level bar find you in approximately 43 minutes, and the survival odds your AI calculated drop significantly. Gorvan's blood ran cold. No one should know about Pix's calculations. That information had never left his ship. You'll depart at 600 station time, Jameson continued, sliding a small data chip across the table. Coordinates, protocols, and recognition patterns for the artifact. Don't try to decrypt the security measures. They're biologically keyed to humans as a failsafe. Gorvan took the chip, his clawed fingers closing around it. You've done this before, sent teams to their deaths. I've done my job, Jameson replied, standing. The question is whether you can do yours better than your predecessors. He turned to leave, then paused. One more thing, if you encounter anything unusual on Kappa 7, do not engage, record, and retreat. Unusual how, Gorven asked. You'll know it when you see it. Jameson's eyes held something Gorven couldn't quite identify. The artifact is in a containment cylinder. Don't open it, don't scan it, just bring it back. After Jameson left, Gorven sat alone, staring at the untouched drinks. The rational part of his brain screamed warnings, but the desperate part, the part that knew what the Zeltari did to their captives, had already made the decision. His ship, the Tarnished Hope, was cleared for departure 6 hours later. As he broke away from Nexus Station, Gorven watched Earth recede in his view screen, a blue-green jewel wrapped in orbital defenses and dark rumors. Plotting course for Outpost Kappa 7, Pix announced. Estimated arrival 47 standard hours. Run another background check on Jameson, Gorven instructed, and analyze this data chip for any hidden tracking or monitoring software. Analysis already complete, Pix replied. No malware detected, however the encryption is unlike any human protocol in my database. Gorvan's scales rippled again, and Jameson. No records exist prior to 3 years ago. Profile appears artificially constructed. Of course, nothing about this job was straightforward. But then again, no human contract ever was. That's why mercenaries across the galaxy whispered warnings about them. That's why the smart ones refused, no matter the payment. As the Tarnished Hope accelerated toward the jump point, Gorven wondered if he would live long enough to spend even a single credit of his payment. Something told him the answer was in the darkness waiting at Outpost Kappa 7, and he wouldn't like what he found there. The descent toward Kappa 7 felt wrong from the moment Gorven's ship breached the atmosphere. Warning alerts flashed across his console as the Tarnished Hope shuddered violently. Atmospheric anomalies detected, Pix announced, her usually cheerful voice taking on a strained quality. Composition includes standard nitrogen-oxygen mix but with trace elements not in my database. Radiation levels, Gorven asked, his four-fingered hands gripping the controls as another turbulence wave hit. Within tolerable parameters but fluctuating in patterns that appear almost deliberate. Gorvan frowned. Deliberate radiation patterns weren't natural. Neither were the strange electromagnetic pulses that had started interfering with his ship's systems the moment he entered orbit. The clouds parted to reveal the abandoned colony below, a sprawling complex of interconnected domes and structures nestled in a valley between jagged mountains. Once home to nearly 10,000 human colonists, Outpost Kappa 7 had been silent for over 2 standard years. Official reports claimed a virulent pathogen had necessitated evacuation, but Gorven had been in this business long enough to recognize a cover story. Landing zone identified, Pix reported. Minimal interference at the northwest landing pad. As the ship settled onto the cracked landing platform, Gorven ran final checks on his equipment. Exosuit with enhanced respiratory filters, multi-spectrum scanner, plasma rifle, and a collection of sensor drones that could extend his search range. The data chip from Jameson was secured in a specialized compartment in his suit, isolated from his ship's systems as a precaution. Maintain active scans, he instructed Pix. If anything approaches the ship, initiate emergency protocols and notify me immediately. Understood. Be careful, Gorven. I'm detecting unusual energy signatures throughout the colony. Stepping out onto the landing pad, Gorven immediately sensed something was off. The air, despite being filtered through his suit, tasted metallic. The gravity felt slightly heavier than the readings had indicated, and there was a persistent humming just at the edge of perception that made his inner ears vibrate uncomfortably. The colony's main entrance stood 50 meters away, its massive door partially open. Environmental damage or left that way by the last visitors. Gorven activated his scanner, sweeping the area for life signs or active technology. Nothing registered, yet the feeling of being watched intensified with each step. Pix scan for surveillance systems, he subvocalized through his neural link. No active cameras detected, came the response in his mind. However, power is still flowing through approximately 37% of the facility. Strange, abandoned colonies typically shut down completely or maintained only minimal emergency systems. This one seemed caught in between, not fully dead, not truly alive. Gorven slipped through the main door, his rifle raised. The entrance hall was a cathedral-like space with a vaulted ceiling that disappeared into darkness above. Emergency lighting cast long shadows across the floor, while dead plants in hydroponic containers lined the walls. One-screen vegetation now turned to brittle gray husks. According to the schematics Jameson had provided, the artifact was being stored in Research Lab Delta near the colony's core. Gorven set off down the main corridor, his footsteps echoing unnaturally in the emptiness. The first bodies appeared 3 intersections in not fresh casualties, but desiccated remains preserved by the colony's climate control. A security team judging by their uniforms. Their weapons were still holstered, suggesting they hadn't seen whatever killed them coming. Pix, are you seeing this? Gorvan transmitted images through his visor. Affirmative, analysis suggests death occurred approximately 22 months ago. No obvious trauma or signs of struggle. Gorvan knelt beside the nearest corpse. The human's face was frozen in an expression of, not pain or fear, but something almost like reverence. Their hand was outstretched toward the wall, where strange markings had been etched into the metal, symbols that reminded Gorvan of ancient Xerillian script but more angular, more urgent. He photographed the markings for later analysis and continued deeper into the facility. Labs Alpha through Gamma were in various states of disarray, equipment scattered, research materials abandoned mid-experiment. In Lab Beta, Gorvan found a holographic recording terminal still partially functional. The fragmented message showed a human researcher speaking urgently. Not what we thought changes molecular structure at the quantum level, affecting the crew's neural pathways, hearing voices from The recording dissolved into static. Gorvan tried to recover more data, but the system was too corrupted. As he approached Research Lab Delta, the humming in his ears intensified. His scanner began showing increasingly erratic readings, temperature fluctuations, radiation spikes, and microscopic spatial distortions that shouldn't be possible under normal physics. The lab's reinforced door was sealed with multiple security systems, most of which had been physically bypassed. Someone had been desperate to get in or out. Gorvan inserted Jameson's data chip into the remaining functional terminal. The door unlocked with a hiss of escaping pressure. Lab Delta was pristine compared to the rest of the facility, meticulously organized with active power systems and environmental controls still functioning. In the center of the room, contained within a transparent cylinder surrounded by sensor arrays and radiation barriers, floated what appeared to be a fragment of black stone no larger than Gorvan's fist. But stone wasn't the right word. The object seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, creating a void in space that hurt to look at directly. Its edges shifted and blurred as if it existed partially in another dimension. Target located, Gorvan reported, approaching cautiously, beginning extraction protocol. As he reached for the containment controls, his scanner suddenly shrieked with alerts. The stone was emanating pulses of energy that matched perfectly with the atmospheric disturbances, the radiation patterns, and the humming that had plagued him since landing. Gorvan, Pix's voice crackled through his communicator. I'm detecting multiple convergent energy signatures moving toward your position. Pattern suggests organized movement. Life forms, he asked, working faster to disengage the containment systems. Negative, energy constructs with particle densities similar to, static interrupted the transmission, previous team's equipment. The implications hit Gorvan like a physical blow. The previous mercenary teams hadn't just died here. Something had repurposed their technology, their very essence. The containment cylinder finally disengaged. Gorvan quickly transferred the artifact to his specialized transport case, careful not to touch it directly. As the case sealed, the humming in his ears changed pitch, becoming almost melodic. Then he heard something else, a rhythmic clanking sound, like metal feet marching in unison, coming from the corridor outside. Pix, prepare for emergency extraction, he ordered, securing the case to his utility belt. What's the fastest route back to the landing pad? Silence. Pix, do you copy? His neural link to the ship had gone dead, so had most of his suit's advanced functions. Only basic life support and his primary scanner remained operational. The clanking grew louder, closer. Through the lab's windows, Gorvan caught glimpses of movement in the corridor, humanoid shapes constructed from mismatched technology, shambling forward with unnatural coordination. He recognized pieces of standard mercenary gear incorporated into their forms. They were coming for the artifact, or for him, perhaps both. With his primary exit blocked, Gorvan checked his scanner for alternatives. A maintenance shaft in the back of the lab might lead to the surface. It was his only chance. As he pried open the access panel, a loud crash announced that the creatures had reached the lab door. Metal screeched against metal as they began forcing their way in. Gorvan slipped into the shaft, the artifact's case thumping rhythmically against his hip as he climbed. The humming had become a song now, words in no language he recognized whispering directly into his mind. Gorvan slipped into the shaft, the artifact's case thumping rhythmically against his hip as he climbed. The humming had become a song now, words in no language he recognized whispering directly into his mind. Bring me home, free me, together we will reshape the stars. For the first time since accepting the contract, Gorvin understood exactly why mercenaries feared human jobs. It wasn't the danger or the death toll. It was the impossible choice between failing the mission and unleashing something that should never have been found. The maintenance shaft narrowed as Gorvin climbed, forcing him to contort his body through tight passages never designed for his species' frame. His breathing grew labored, the metallic taste in the air more pronounced despite his respirator. Behind him, the sounds of pursuit echoed, scraping metal and unnatural mechanical whirring that sent pulses of primal fear through his nervous system. Arvan, can you signal weak? Pix's voice crackled through his communicator, fragmenting into static. Pix, route to extraction point, he gasped, wedging himself through a particularly tight section. The artifact's case banged against his thigh, each impact sending waves of strange warmth through his scales. North Tower's emergency, hurry. The transmission died completely. Gorvin swore in his native tongue, a guttural sound that reverberated through the shaft. According to his mental map of the facility, the North Tower would be accessible 2 levels up, assuming the schematics Jameson provided were accurate. He paused at a junction, his scanner revealing a large open space above. A vertical service area, perhaps. As he pushed through the ceiling panel, Gorvin found himself in what appeared to be a central atrium, a massive cylindrical space that extended upward through multiple levels of the colony. Emergency lighting cast eerie blue shadows across abandoned hydroponics gardens and communal seating areas. Most disturbing were the markings, the same strange symbols he'd seen near the corpses, now covering nearly every surface. They'd been carved with desperate precision into walls, floors, furniture, even the withered plants. Gorvan's translator couldn't make sense of them, but their pattern suggested a mathematical progression, growing more complex as they spiraled upward. Understanding comes to those who listen, whispered the voice from the artifact. Your kind once knew us, before the sundering. Gorvan ignored it, scanning for an exit route. The North Tower would be accessible via a skybridge on the 5th level. He began climbing the emergency ladder fixed to the atrium wall, every sense alert for danger. Halfway up, movement caught his eye. On the 3rd level balcony, a figure stood watching him, humanoid but wrong in proportions. Not one of the mechanical monstrosities that had pursued him, but something else. Even in the dim light, Gorvin could see the figure wore the tattered remains of a standard environmental suit, similar to those used by mercenary teams throughout the galaxy. Identify yourself, Gorvin called out, his plasma rifle trained on the figure. The figure twitched unnaturally, head tilting at an impossible angle. Collector, it responded in a voice that seemed composed of multiple overlapping tones. Like you. Are you from the previous teams? Previous, current, future. The figure moved closer to the railing. Its face came into the light, or what remained of a face. The skin had a translucent quality, stretched over features that shifted subtly as if the bone structure beneath was fluid. All become one here. Gorvin kept climbing, maintaining his aim on the figure. What happened to this colony? What is this artifact? Not artifact, seed. The figure's mouth moved out of sync with its words. Planted long before your kind crawled from oceans. Humans found it, tried to understand, but understanding requires transformation. With unnatural speed, the figure vaulted over the railing, landing on the ladder just below Gorvan. Its fingers, too many fingers, gripped the rungs with impossible strength. Give us the seed, it hissed, climbing upward. Complete the cycle. Gorvin fired a plasma burst, striking the creature squarely in the chest. It spasmed, losing its grip and plummeting to the atrium floor far below. Instead of the wet impact he expected, there came a sound like shattering glass, followed by a rush of escaping gas. No time to process what he'd seen. Gorvin doubled his pace, reaching the 5th level and sprinting across the skybridge toward the North Tower. The structure swayed unnervingly beneath his weight, its support cables groaning. As he neared the tower entrance, his communicator suddenly crackled to life. Urgency override, repeat, this is Sentinel command to all operatives. Emergency override Obsidian protocol. Sterilization commences in 30 minutes. Evacuate immediately. Gorvan froze. Sterilization protocols were the military's euphemism for total atomic cleansing, used only in cases of extreme contamination or prohibited research. Someone had decided Kappa-7 needed to disappear completely. Inside the North Tower, emergency evacuation lights pulsed along the floor, guiding the way to landing pads on the roof. Gorvin followed them, his mind racing. 30 minutes wasn't much time, but enough if he could reach his ship without further delays. The tower's central stairwell spiraled upward around a massive cylindrical structure, not part of the original colony design. It resembled a giant antenna, but constructed from materials that didn't match human manufacturing techniques. The symbols covered its surface, glowing faintly with internal light. They built it for us, the artifact whispered, a beacon to call the others, but they were impatient, tried to accelerate the process. Gorven climbed faster, ignoring the voice. 10 floors up, he encountered another barrier. The stairwell ahead had collapsed. The only way forward was through a research module connected to the antenna structure. The moment he stepped inside, Gorven knew he'd found the colony's true purpose. The circular room was filled with examination tables and analysis equipment, all oriented toward the antenna. On the tables lay what remained of the colonists, bodies in various stages of a transformation Gorven couldn't begin to comprehend. Some had partially merged with technology, others with what appeared to be the same black material as the artifact. And there, displayed prominently on the main console, was an identical containment cylinder to the one he carried, empty. "Two seeds," came a voice from behind him, "two beacons." Gorven spun around, weapon raised. A human female stood in the doorway. At least she had once been human. Now her skin rippled with subsurface movement, and her eyes reflected light like polished obsidian. "Dr. Verity Winslow," she said, her voice remarkably normal. "Colony Research Director, you must be the latest collector." "Stay back," Gorven warned. "I'm leaving with this artifact, and I won't hesitate to shoot." "Artifact?" she repeated with a strange smile. "Is that what Jameson called it? Did he tell you what it really is, what we discovered?" Despite himself, Gorven was curious. He said it was pre-galactic technology. Dr. Winslow laughed, a sound like wind through dead branches. "It's not technology, it's alive, sentient. The seeds of a consciousness that existed before the universe took its current form. They've been waiting dormant for millions of years." She gestured toward the antenna. "We thought we could control it, study it, harness its ability to manipulate matter and energy at the quantum level, but it studied us instead, changed us, showed us what we could become." "You look more consumed than evolved to me," Gorven replied. "Perspective," she said dismissively. "Jameson works for people who want the seed's power without its guidance. They think they can contain it, weaponize it. They can't, no one can." Gorven checked his chronometer, 22 minutes until sterilization, and the previous mercenary teams joined us most willingly after they understood. Her gaze dropped to the case at his hip. "That one calls to you already, doesn't it? Whispers promises, shows you glimpses of what could be." It was true, though Gorven had been fighting to ignore it. The artifact's voice had been growing stronger, more persuasive, offering visions of power beyond imagining. "Why send Jameson for a second seed if you already had one?" "We didn't send him, your employers did. They want both seeds to ensure neither falls into rival hands. But they don't understand what awakening both would mean." Gorven stepped backward toward the only other exit, a maintenance passage that might lead to the roof. And what would it mean? Dr. Winslow's expression became ecstatic. Transformation, not just of this colony or planet but everything, a return to the universe as it was meant to be. A distant explosion shook the tower. The sterilization preparation had begun, orbital platforms positioning themselves. "You won't make it off-world with the seed," Dr. Winslow said calmly. "But you could join us, become part of something greater. The seed recognizes potential in your genetic structure." "I'll take my chances," Gorven replied, backing through the doorway. "The humans fear us because they understand what we represent," she called after him. "The end of their dominion. Why do you think they're so desperate to control the seeds? Why they hire expendable mercenaries instead of retrieving them themselves?" Another explosion, closer this time, the tower shuddered. Another explosion, closer this time, the tower shuddered. 15 minutes until sterilization. Your ship won't clear the blast radius in time." Gorven ran, the doctor's words echoing in his mind. He burst onto the roof, the night sky above now streaked with the fiery trails of incoming ordnance. Across the landing pad, the tarnished Hope waited, engines already glowing with pre-launch warmth. As he sprinted toward his ship, the artifact's case grew searingly hot against his side, the whispers turning to screams of protest. It didn't want to leave. It wanted him to stay, to join the colony's transformed inhabitants, to become part of whatever terrible evolution was taking place here. For the first time since accepting the contract, Gorven understood the true price of human jobs. They didn't just risk your life, they risked your very nature, your essence. The reason alien mercenaries feared human contracts wasn't just the danger. It was because humans only hired outsiders for jobs that threatened to unmake reality itself. The tarnished Hope's boarding ramp descended as Gorven approached, Pix having detected his biosignature. Wind howled across the landing pad, carrying the acrid scent of chemical fires from the colony's lower levels. The sky above had turned an unnatural crimson as defense satellites moved into position. 12 minutes until sterilization, Pix's voice announced as Gorven stumbled aboard. Engine pre-ignition complete, awaiting departure command. Gorven sealed the airlock behind him, his scaled hands trembling from exertion and adrenaline. The artifact's case had grown so hot it had begun to warp, the specialized containment materials struggling against whatever energy emanated from within. "Launch immediately," he gasped, making his way toward the cockpit. "Maximum burn until we clear the atmosphere, then execute emergency jump protocols." "Calculating optimal escape vector," Pix responded. "Warning, unidentified energy signature detected within the ship, localized to cargo you are carrying." The ship shuddered as its engines engaged, lifting off from the landing pad. Through the viewports, Gorven could see movement across the colony, hundreds of transformed colonists emerging from buildings, their faces turned skyward in eerie unison. 9 minutes until sterilization, Pix updated. Atmospheric interference increasing, navigation systems compromised. Gorven strapped himself into the pilot's seat, manually overriding the navigation controls. The artifact's case now glowed with an internal light that leaked through the seams, bathing the cockpit in pulsing shadows. "You cannot leave," the voice insisted, no longer a whisper but a thunderous presence in his mind. "We have waited too long. The awakening must proceed." "Not my problem," Gorven muttered, fighting to maintain focus as the tarnished Hope climbed through turbulent air currents. The colony receded below, its sprawling structure dominated by the massive antenna at its center, now visibly pulsing with the same light as the artifact. As they broke through the cloud layer, new alerts flashed across the console. Multiple vessels had entered orbit, military-grade destroyers bearing Earth Alliance insignia. The sterilization fleet. "Incoming transmission," Pix announced, "priority channel." A familiar voice filled the cockpit. "Mercenary vessel, this is Commander Jameson of Earth Alliance Special Operations. Power down your engines and prepare to be boarded." Gorvan's blood ran cold, not a civilian contractor military. The pieces clicked into place. The desperate mission, the expendable alien mercenaries, the willingness to obliterate an entire colony. "You knew," Gorvan snarled into the comm. "You knew what was down there, what that thing is." "You've completed your contract," Jameson replied, his voice professionally detached. "Transfer the artifact to our custody and you'll receive full payment as agreed." The tarnished Hope broke through the upper atmosphere, the blackness of space opening before them, and with it, the imposing silhouettes of 3 warships positioned to block escape routes. 7 minutes until sterilization, Pix warned. Gorven cut the communication channel. "Calculate alternative jump coordinates, anything that gets us out of this system." "All standard routes blocked by Earth Alliance vessels," Pix reported. "Calculating unconventional options. Warning, only solution requires jump initiation within planetary gravity well. Success probability 38%. A near-suicidal maneuver, but better odds than surrendering to Jameson. Gorven engaged the ship's countermeasures as the first warning shots streaked past, designed to disable, not destroy. They wanted the artifact intact. "They will use us to destroy," the artifact's voice resonated, "to conquer, to remake existence in their image, not ours. Is that what you want?" "I want to survive," Gorven growled, executing a series of evasive maneuvers as the tarnished Hope accelerated toward the calculated jump point. "Survival is transformation," it insisted. "Open the case. Accept the gift, become our vessel." A tractor beam from the nearest destroyer caught the ship's port side, sending it into a dangerous spin. Gorven fought the controls, systems overloading as he pushed the engines beyond safety parameters. "Hull integrity compromised," Pix announced. "Port stabilizer failing, jump coordinates locked but unreachable under current conditions." 5 minutes until sterilization. The artifact's case had begun to crack, threads of darkness seeping through like liquid shadow. The cockpit instruments flickered as the energy interfered with shipboard systems. Gorven had run out of conventional options. With grim determination, he initiated the emergency protocol he'd hoped never to use, a localized electromagnetic pulse designed to disrupt the tractor beam. It would fry most of his ship's systems in the process, but the momentum might carry them to the jump point. "Pix, prepare to divert all remaining power to jump drives on my mark," he ordered, hand hovering over the EMP trigger. "Warning," Pix responded, her voice distorting. "Unknown infection detected in primary systems. Origin artifact containment case." On the view screen, Gorven watched with horror as tendrils of darkness spread across the console, flowing from the case toward the ship's control interfaces. The artifact was attempting to merge with his vessel. Jameson to mercenary vessel, the commander's voice returned, urgency breaking through his professional demeanor. Our sensors detect containment failure. Jettison the artifact immediately. Repeat, jettison the artifact before complete breach. The case split open with a sound like reality tearing. What emerged wasn't solid matter but something between energy and liquid, a writhing darkness that retained the rough shape of the stone fragment while constantly shifting and expanding. We offered you transformation, the voice boomed in Gorvan's mind. Now we take what we need. The darkness lunged toward him. Acting on instinct, Gorvan activated the EMP with one hand while reaching for his plasma rifle with the other. Electricity arced through the cockpit as every system went dark simultaneously. The tractor beam faltered. In the momentary darkness, Gorvan fired repeatedly at the moving shadow. Each plasma burst illuminated the cockpit in stark relief, revealing glimpses of something vast compressed into an impossible space, geometries that hurt to perceive, textures that shouldn't exist. 3 minutes until sterilization. The emergency lighting activated, bathing the cockpit in red. Free from the tractor beam, the tarnished Hope tumbled toward the jump coordinates, guided only by momentum and minimal backup systems. The darkness had retreated, condensing around the shattered remains of its containment case. Gorvan reached for the manual jump initiator, a dangerous last-resort mechanism, when movement in his peripheral vision made him freeze. Where the artifact had been, something new had formed, a perfect replica of himself constructed from the same shifting darkness, watching him with eyes that reflected no light. "What are you?" Gorvan demanded, plasma rifle trained on the doppelganger. "We are the before," it answered with his voice, but layered with countless others. Seeds scattered when the previous universe collapsed, waiting to germinate in this one. Your kind was meant to find us, to host our awakening. And the colony, those peoples. Early stages, imperfect vessels. The duplicate tilted its head in an unnervingly fluid motion. But your genetic structure is compatible in ways humans are not. Ancient compatibility, your ancestors knew us. The ship shuddered violently as it approached the jump point. Outside, the first waves of the sterilization protocol had begun, atmospheric ignition that would soon cascade into total molecular disintegration of the planet's surface. 1 minute until planetary sterilization complete. "You must choose," the duplicate said, gesturing toward the jump initiator. "Accept us and survive, carrying our seed to fertile grounds, or die here, ending both our journeys." Gorvan's mind raced. If he accepted, he would become like the colonists, transformed, no longer himself. If he refused, the sterilization would overtake them before the jump could complete. And if by some miracle they escaped, Jameson's destroyers would hunt them across the galaxy. A third option crystallized. With deliberate movements, Gorvan adjusted the jump coordinates. "What are you doing?" the duplicate asked, darkness rippling across its surface. "Making a choice," Gorvan replied, engaging the manual override for the ship's remaining systems. New coordinates locked in not toward escape, but directly toward Jameson's command destroyer. The duplicate's form wavered in apparent confusion. "This path leads to destruction." "It leads to both our ends," Gorvan agreed, sealing the cockpit doors and engaging the collision course. "But it also ensures you won't spread, won't transform others against their will." "We offer evolution," the voice insisted, now desperate. "Transcendence from mortality." "You offer extinction of what we are," Gorvan countered. "I'd rather die as myself than live as something else." Sterilization sequence complete, planetary surface integrity failing. Behind them, Kappa 7 began to break apart as molecular bonds throughout its atmosphere and crust simultaneously weakened. The shockwave would reach them in seconds, pushing them even faster toward the destroyer. The duplicate lunged forward, darkness expanding to engulf the cockpit. Gorvan fired his final plasma charge directly into the ship's fuel regulation system. The resulting explosion ripped through the lower decks, sending the tarnished Hope into an uncontrollable spiral. As consciousness faded, Gorvan saw the destroyer growing larger in the viewscreen, emergency evasion protocols activating too late. The darkness screamed in his mind, not in fear but in rage at being denied its purpose. His last conscious thought was a grim satisfaction. No alien mercenary would ever accept another human contract because of what happened here. The warning would spread. The cost was too high, not just in lives, but in the very essence of what it meant to exist as oneself. Then darkness claimed him, but it was his darkness, not the artifacts, his end on his terms. Or so he thought. Consciousness returned to Gorvan in fragments, sensations without context, memories without sequence. Pain lanced through his body, but it felt wrong somehow, distant, as if happening to someone else. His eyes opened to sterile white walls and the soft hum of medical equipment. Not the afterlife then, not the cockpit of his ship hurtling toward destruction. A hospital room, minimalist in design with Earth Alliance insignia displayed prominently on the door. "The subject is conscious," announced a clinical voice. A human in a laboratory coat approached, accompanied by two armed guards. His face was weathered, eyes sharp with intelligence and something colder, the look of someone who had authorized countless deaths in the name of necessity. "Mercenary Trell," the man said, consulting a data tablet. "You've created quite the situation." Gorvin tried to speak, but no sound emerged. His throat felt strange, reconstructed. When he attempted to move, he realized his limbs were secured by restraints unlike any he'd seen before, glowing with a soft blue light where they touched his scales. "Quantum state restraints," the man explained, noticing his gaze. "Designed specifically to contain entities that can shift states of matter, a precaution you understand." Memory flooded back the artifact, the duplicate, the collision course. Gorvin's eyes widened as understanding dawned. They thought he was infected, transformed. "I'm Director Harlow," the man continued. "Xenobiological Containment Division. You're aboard the research vessel Prometheus, currently in deep space quarantine protocols." Gorvin found his voice, though it emerged as a rasp. "The artifact." "Contained both fragments, actually." Harlow's expression remained neutral. "The one you carried and the one from the colony. Quite the accomplishment, recovering them intact despite your dramatic escape attempt." Escape attempt? Gorvin had been trying to destroy the artifact, not escape with it. Something was very wrong. "You remember crashing into Jameson's destroyer," Harlow said, reading his confusion. "That didn't happen. We intercepted your vessel moments before impact. The artifact had already breached containment but hadn't fully merged with you yet." "The planet." "Kappa 7 is gone. Sterilization protocol completed successfully." Harlow set down his tablet. "What's interesting is that you survived at all. The artifact usually completes transformation within minutes of direct contact, yet something about your physiology resisted." Gorvin tried to process this information. If they had both artifacts contained, why keep him alive, unless... "You want to know what it told me," he guessed. Harlow smiled thinly. "Precisely. The seeds, as you learn they're called, communicate differently with each species. With humans, they showed visions of power, weaponization potential. With the previous mercenaries, they offered evolutionary advantages. But you heard something different, didn't you?" Gorvin remained silent, suddenly aware of the cameras recording every aspect of this conversation. "The truth," Harlow pressed, "about what they really are, what they want. You're the first to encounter one and retain enough of yourself to potentially tell us." The room's lighting flickered momentarily, so briefly it might have been imagination. But Gorvin caught Harlow's reaction, a flash of fear quickly suppressed. "They're not contained, are they?" Gorvin said, realization dawning. "Not completely." Harlow's jaw tightened. "Our containment is sufficient." "Then why are we in deep space quarantine instead of a planetary facility?" Gorvin challenged. "Why risk bringing both seeds together if you've truly mastered containment?" One of the guards shifted uncomfortably. Harlow shot him a warning glance. "You haven't transported us away from civilization to protect others," Gorvin continued, strength returning to his voice. "You've done it to hide what's happening. The transformation has already begun in your crew, in your systems." "That's enough," Harlow snapped. "We have protocols." "Protocols designed by minds that can't comprehend what these things are," Gorvin interrupted. "They're not weapons or tools or even life forms as we understand them. They're fragments of a different reality trying to remake ours." The lights flickered again, longer this time. In that moment of darkness, Gorvin saw it, microscopic threads of shadow crawling across the walls, pulsing with the same rhythm as the artifact. "Director," one of the guards said, voice strained. "The containment field on sublevel 3 is fluctuating again." Harlow's composed facade cracked. "Increase power to the quantum barriers, full spectrum isolation." "We've already diverted maximum power," engineering reports. "I don't care what engineering reports, find more power." Gorvin laughed, a hollow sound that surprised even him. "You can't contain them because they don't exist solely in our dimension. Every attempt to study them creates another connection, another bridge." Harlow's attention snapped back to him. "You do understand them." "I understand enough to know bringing them together was your final mistake." Gorvin tested his restraints. They seemed solid, but something felt different about his body, cellular changes he couldn't yet identify. "How many of your crew have reported hearing voices, seeing shadows move against light sources? How many have disappeared only to return? Changed?" Alarm flashed across Harlow's face, confirming Gorvan's suspicions. The transformation was spreading throughout the ship. We still have time, Harlow insisted, more to himself than to Gorvan. The isolation protocols. There's no isolation from something that exists partially outside our reality, Gorvan said quietly. The seeds aren't just awakening themselves. They're awakening something that's been dormant in certain species, genetic memory of the universe before this one. The ship's main lights suddenly failed, emergency systems activating with a dull red glow. Distant alarms began to sound. Director, a panicked voice came through the communication system. Containment breach on all levels. The specimens are the transmission cut off in static. Harlow drew a sidearm backing toward the door. Initiate Omega Protocol, he ordered the guards. Prepare the escape shuttle. What about the prisoner? One guard asked. Harlow's gaze met Gorvan's, calculating, desperate. He comes with us. He's the only one who's shown resistance to complete transformation. As they moved to release his restraints, Gorvan felt something shift within him, a presence that had been quietly growing since his encounter with the artifact. Not the overwhelming force that had attacked his consciousness on Kappa 7, but something subtler. An awakening of dormant genetic memory, just as he described. The restraints deactivated. As Gorvan stood, he caught his reflection in a medical monitor. His scales now bore intricate patterns that pulsed with faint luminescence, matching the rhythm of his heartbeats. What's happening to me? He asked, though he already suspected the answer. Partial transformation, Harlow said, gesturing him toward the door. Your species must have encountered the seeds in your evolutionary past, created defenses. They moved into the corridor, where chaos had erupted. Crew members ran in all directions, some trying to maintain order, others moving with the strange fluidity Gorvan had seen in the transformed colonists. The shadows along the walls and ceiling rippled with awareness. The shuttle bay is 2 levels down, Harlow directed, leading their small group toward an emergency stairwell. If we can reach it before total systems failure. A figure stepped into their path, Commander Jameson, though barely recognizable. His form wavered between solid and shadow, eyes reflecting impossible depths. Director Harlow, he said in a voice that echoed strangely, the integration is proceeding faster than anticipated. Your presence is required. Jameson is compromised, Harlow hissed, raising his weapon. Find another route. Before they could retreat, darkness surged from every direction, flowing from ventilation shafts, crawling along power conduits, emerging from the very metal of the ship itself. The 2 guards were engulfed instantly, their screams cutting off as their forms melted into the advancing shadow. Gorvan grabbed Harlow's arm, dragging him down a side passage. Is there another way to the shuttles? Maintenance tube junction, Harlow gasped, pointing ahead. But the whole ship is infected now, we'll never. Keep moving, Gorvan ordered, feeling the strange new patterns on his scales grow warmer. They seemed to repel the shadows, creating a small zone of protection around him. They reached the junction, a narrow access point that would take them directly to the lower levels. As Harlow input the emergency override, Gorvan felt a presence behind them. You cannot escape what is already inside you, said a voice, not Jameson's now, but a chorus of countless others speaking in unison. The darkness had formed into a vaguely humanoid shape, rippling with faces and forms from a dozen different species. The awakening spreads across your galaxy already. More seeds activate, more vessels receive our truth. How many seeds are there? Gorvan demanded, positioning himself between the entity and Harlow. As numerous as stars, the entity replied, scattered across galaxies. Waiting, those you call humans found more than just 2. They have been collecting us for decades, thinking to harness power they cannot comprehend. The maintenance tube opened. Harlow slipped inside, but Gorvan hesitated, transfixed by the revelation. Why resist what you already are becoming? The entity asked, gesturing to the patterns on Gorvan's scales. Your ancestors knew us, welcomed us, your genetic code remembers. A memory surfaced, not Gorvan's own, but something older, buried deep in evolutionary history. His species had indeed encountered the seeds before, thousands of generations ago. But instead of being consumed, they had achieved symbiosis, taking enough to evolve without surrendering their identity. The balance, Gorvan murmured, that's what you fear, not resistance but balance. The entity recoiled slightly. Balance is stagnation, transformation must be complete. Inside the maintenance tube, Harlow called out, Trell, now or never. Gorvan made his decision. He backed into the tube, never taking his eyes off the entity as Harlow sealed the hatch behind them. They descended rapidly toward the shuttle bay, the metal around them groaning as the ship's structure began to warp under influences beyond conventional physics. What did it mean about humans collecting seeds for decades? Gorvan asked as they climbed down the ladder. Harlow's face was grim in the emergency lighting. Classified information. But yes, Earth Alliance found the first seed 40 years ago. Since then, we've recovered 17. 17, Gorvin was stunned. And you kept them, studied them, despite knowing what they do. We thought we could control them, weaponize their reality-altering properties. Harlow laughed bitterly. Every species makes the same mistake when they find a seed. The Dravaki tried 600 years ago, the Sentinel Collective before them, always the same outcome. They reached the shuttle bay level, finding it in disarray but not yet overtaken by shadows. A single shuttle remained operational, its engines already in pre-launch sequence. As they rushed toward it, Gorvin felt the patterns on his scales burning hotter, responding to something nearby. He paused, sensing a presence within the shuttle, not shadow, but something equally ancient. Harlow, he warned, the shuttle is compromised. It's our only option, Harlow replied, desperation overtaking caution. He sprinted for the boarding ramp. Wait, Gorvin called, but too late. As Harlow reached the shuttle, its outer hull rippled like liquid, engulfing him instantly. His scream lasted only seconds before being absorbed into the transforming matter. The shuttle itself began to change, its rigid structure flowing into new configurations that defied engineering principles. At its core, Gorvin glimpsed something familiar, another seed previously hidden, now awakening in response to the others. The entire ship shuddered violently. Emergency sirens wailed as systems failed across all decks. The transformation was accelerating, spreading from the ship to the surrounding space itself. Reality warped visibly around the Prometheus, stars bending in impossible directions. Gorvin stood alone in the shuttle bay, trapped between encroaching shadows and the transformed shuttle. The patterns on his scales now burned with blinding intensity, creating a barrier the darkness couldn't penetrate. Understanding crystallized within him. The seeds couldn't be destroyed or contained, but they could be balanced. His species had done it before, integrating just enough of the seed's essence to evolve while maintaining their original nature. The key wasn't resistance, but acceptance without surrender, taking the transformation on his own terms. Gorvin closed his eyes, focusing on the ancient memory encoded in his DNA. The patterns on his scales spread, covering his entire body with glowing symbols that matched those he'd seen in the colony. Not submitted to, but channeled. When he opened his eyes again, he perceived reality differently, multiple layers existing simultaneously, including the shadow dimension from which the seeds originated. He could see their true nature now, not conquerors but fragments of a lost universe, driven by the instinct to recreate what had been destroyed. The ship's final structural supports gave way. As the Prometheus began to collapse into the interdimensional rift forming at its center, Gorvin accessed his newfound awareness to create his own path, stepping sideways through reality itself. He emerged in empty space, kilometers from the disintegrating vessel. Without protection, the vacuum should have killed him instantly. Instead, the balanced transformation sustained him, creating a bubble of habitable space around his body. The Prometheus imploded in a silent flash that bent light itself, creating a temporary dimensional gateway that collapsed almost immediately. But not before Gorvin sensed dozens of seeds awakening in response across the galaxy, on research stations, military outposts, and colonized planets where humans had hidden their dangerous collection. The transformation had begun on a galactic scale. There would be no stopping it now. As Gorvin drifted in space, calculating his next move, he understood why alien mercenaries feared human contracts. It wasn't just the danger or the deception. It was because humans, in their relentless pursuit of power and knowledge, inevitably discovered things that should remain undiscovered. Things that changed not just those who found them, but reality itself. With his new perception, Gorvin could sense a distant planet where others like him existed, beings who had achieved the balance, who could teach him to navigate this transformed existence without losing himself completely. And perhaps together they could prepare for what was coming, not to stop it, that was impossible now, but to guide it. To ensure that whatever emerged from this galactic transformation retained something of the universe they had known. It was the ultimate price of knowledge. Once uncovered, some truths could never be buried again. They could only be faced with hope that understanding would bring wisdom rather than extinction. Gorvin turned toward the distant stars and began his journey, no longer just a mercenary, but a messenger carrying the most important warning the galaxy would ever receive.